Hey, welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey, and I've got another great guest for you guys today. I also just want to do the normal homework off the top, and I do want to shout out my man, Nick Heilig, who was on the show recently, who made these excellent Wu-Tang Cat t-shirts. Nick's a great guy. If you didn't catch my interview on Sunday, I had my friend Evan Carlson on, who's been working with Neck Broadband here for 6 or 7 years to try to get internet access to rural Vermonters. And I think my guest today has done some of that similar work, probably. Also had Derek Granai and Brooke Granai from Bushy Beard Cultivation on the show. Great talking with them always. AC Moon out in California, talking about some of her interactions with law enforcement and her inventions and her cultivation. I had Yasha Khan from MCR Labs down in Massachusetts, who's doing some great work down there. And I had Anthony Minetti from the Bell Rexall Pharmacy and the Camden Apothecary Dispensary. Super fascinating chat about rescheduling versus descheduling. And of course, my man Lou Rinaldi, Connecticut patient advocate down in Connecticut. And coming up, I don't have much stuff coming up, guys. On Sunday, I'm going to be featured on the 5H radio show with Amy Page down in Warren, and I'm super excited to talk to Amy. I met her at the State House when I was there for some of the press conferences with John Rogers, and I'll also be having John back on the show too here coming up soon. My guest today, guys, I don't want to waste much time. He's got a hard stop at 2, so he did high school and college down in Massachusetts. He's also worked in the Caribbean with architecture firms, land surveying firms, commercial construction firms, specializing in cell tower site construction. And he's also invested in a number of cannabis communities, cannabis companies around the country. Sorry, I'm stuttering here a little bit. From Satori, Vermont. Please welcome to the show, John Campbell. John, thanks for being here today, man.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Caleb. I appreciate it.
Cool. So before we do anything serious, would you mind giving us a 5-minute life story?
Yeah, try and keep it not too boring. I grew up a mass hole in Sherborn, Massachusetts, which is about 20 minutes outside of Boston. Went to public school there, went to Dover-Sherborn High School, graduated, went to college at the other end of the state in Williamstown. And then after college, ended up moving down to the Caribbean with my wife, where we ended up having 3 kids that were all born and raised on St. John in the Virgin Islands. Lived there for 11 years. Yeah, 11 years. And then lived in Puerto Rico for 3 years. In the Virgin Islands, initially, as you'd mentioned, I had an architecture company and a surveying company, and then that evolved into a construction company that ended up evolving into steel erection and building cell towers, which was actually my favorite job I've probably ever had. I enjoyed building the towers so much. I remember thinking all the time we'd be up, 200-300 feet in the air, bolting these steel legs and braces together, and thinking, this is so much fun. I'd do it for free. But what was so great is that because this was right at the beginning of the explosion of cell phone use, we were making good money, and it was awesome. Sold the company and ended up moving to Idaho, where I tried being retired for 9 months, and that didn't work because I have this thing called ADD that I didn't know about at the time, but now I know about it, where I go crazy if I don't do something if I don't have something to occupy my time and energy and focus. So we started the Idaho Tower Company. We grew that up. We ended up merging that with another company, and that grew. And then we ended up selling that company 3 years ago, I guess, for a real lot of money. And it was super fun because I was on the board the whole time. So I got to watch a company grow from, being worth millions to being worth billions. And that was fun to have a front row seat to that happening. Before the company sold, I had started to invest. Well, that's kind of my life story. Do you want me to roll into how I get into cannabis, or what would you like?
Please go ahead. And I did want to ask you about one thing maybe before we go into the cannabis, which was this Biocote, which is an in-vessel composting company. Would you tell us a little bit about that
Yeah,
first?
that's a really cool company. So what happened was here in Idaho, I live in Ketchum, which is right near the Sun Valley Ski Resort. There's this kid who, are you allowed to swear on your show? I kind of swear a lot.
You say whatever you fucking want, John.
All right. There's this kid. He was a hot shit ski racer, and he was a smart kid, and he was involved with this company called Biocote, and they needed some investment dollars to grow the company. And so I'd never heard of it, and he explained it to me. And what it is they make these things called in-vessel composters. And what that is in California and in lots of other states, you're no longer allowed to throw your garbage, which would be your organic waste, away with your trash, which would be your inorganic waste. You have to separate them. And it's very expensive. It's a large carbon footprint to haul the garbage separately from the trash. And so these in-vessel composters are for companies. They buy these big things, and you literally put garbage into one end of it, and then it heats it up, and it has these big arms that that stir it up. And after like 3 days, what comes out is dirt. And it's not weird dirt. It's not like funky dirt. This is regular dirt. And when Tanner is his name, when Tanner told me about it, I was like, no way, that can't be true. So I drove down to see one of these things in action, and it is just amazing. You can put anything into this. You can put cannabis waste, where after you've bucked the weeds and so on, you can put the waste into the Biocote machine. You can put regular garbage. You can put grass clippings. You can put all sorts of anything that's organic. You put in, it heats it up, it stirs it up, and if you put in 10 barrels of garbage, you get out 1 barrel of dirt. So I don't know. I thought it was a cool concept. The company was needing some capital to expand and grow, and so I invested in it, and I'm on the board of that company. Though I don't have a controlling interest. I'm just kind of involved helping this kid Tanner, who's in his late 20s, early 30s, grow the company, which is fun for me.
And guys, normally I run this banner at the bottom that says drop questions or comments. I want to get through some of the stuff I have to ask here first, and maybe we'll take a couple questions at the end. So yeah, let's transition over into maybe I'd like to ask you, why did you decide to get into the cannabis industry, John?
Well, 2 reasons leap to mind. The first is I think cannabis is, this sounds a little bit dramatic, but I really believe it. I believe cannabis is life enriching. My mother died of a horrible disease. It was called PLS. It's the slow acting form of Lou Gehrig's disease, which is ALS. And she found relief with Marinol, which, as you're probably aware, is synthetic cannabis, and which was a relief to get off, the huge encyclopedia of pharmaceuticals she was on. I also, I'm old, as you can see, and I have a lot of friends that, are veterans, and my kids have friends that are veterans, and they've found cannabis to be unbelievably effective at relieving PTSD symptoms, all sorts of, appetite problems for friends of mine that have had to battle cancer. I think it's a good product, and I think it's gotten an unfairly and bad rap over time. And I wanted to hopefully be involved in spreading a more objective, positive word about cannabis. The second reason why I got involved is, the tower business, when I got into it, was really an emerging business because there weren't cell phones 30 years ago. And only super rich people had them 20 years ago. But then that changed as the FCC gave out more licenses so that there could be more the cell phone companies, and there was more of a demand for cell towers. And it was kind of, I like being part of an emerging industry, because I don't know, it was exciting, it was fun, it was challenging, it was unexpected. And after I got out of towers, I kind of saw cannabis as being very similar to the tower business, in that it was relatively, well, the legal side of it was relatively new, and it was challenging, and I don't know, the novelty of it. Actually, that's not the right word. The
I thought that was
fact
a good word.
wasn't. What's that?
I thought that was a good word.
Yeah, but novelty implies like a lack of seriousness oftentimes.
No, it implies something new.
Yeah, sure. The newness side of it is good, but and so, you know, I think my entry into the cannabis business was when a friend of mine, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago, he had a buddy who was a commercial landlord and rented space in Boulder to a grower in Boulder. And the grower in Boulder wanted to try and get one of the grower processor licenses that was about to be issued in Pennsylvania, because he had gone to school in Pennsylvania and so on. But he needed investors. And so I took a look at it and I thought, oh, you know, this could be fun. It's new. It's got the novelty that we chatted about. It's got the ability to be very, I don't know, financially remunerative. It also has the ability to be a total bust, because at the time Jeff Sessions was the Attorney General, and you may recall that, you know, Jeff said good people don't, you know, smoke cannabis, or good people don't use cannabis or something.
Jeff is not particularly friendly to cannabis.
No, and so I was thinking, ooh, you know, I'm investing in something that is federally illegal, but is legal in the state, and is something that, you know, I think is a good thing. So so I did it, and long story short, it was a good investment, for one reason that I had hoped for, and one reason that really caught me by surprise. The reason I'd hoped for is, you know, I'd hoped that it would generate a nice financial return for me, which it did. But the thing that really surprised me was we built this, we transformed an old pre-manufactured home building facility. It was really big. It was like 135,000 square feet. We transformed it into an indoor grow. And it's in Jersey Shore, which is in central Pennsylvania. You would think Jersey Shore would be on the coast, but it's on the shore of a river. And there was a pretty depressed area of Pennsylvania. And all of a sudden, there was a ton of jobs for changing this building from an abandoned warehouse that was used to store campers into a grow. And that injected a ton of cash into the local economy, and it gave jobs to people that needed the jobs. And then once we had the facility up and running, it provided a ton of jobs. Like, I don't know what the latest employee count is, but I want to say there's something like 135 people that are now employed in a building that used to be a real eyesore in a part of Pennsylvania that used to really be struggling. And so it was neat to see that. I felt like this was a win-win, because it was a win for the people that had jobs. It was a win for me and the fellow investors, because we were getting a return on the money that we had invested. You know, it was a win for the state of Pennsylvania, because they were collecting a ton of tax revenue off of our operation. And it was a win for the cannabis consumers in Pennsylvania, which then was only medical, and which still is only medical. So, you know, I thought that was pretty cool. And so for that reason, I started to invest in other cannabis companies. And, you know, my wife is from Vermont. She grew up in East Burke, Vermont, in the Northeast Kingdom.
That's my stomping grounds. That's my stomping grounds, John.
Yeah, so she graduated from Linden Institute. And
that's where I went to high school. Huh.
Oh, really?
Imagine that. Yeah, dude. I was born and raised in Linden.
She tells me that cheer. It's like, Linden Vikings can't be beat. I forget what it is. Stamp your hands, clap your feet. Linden Vikings can't be beat. Something like that. Anyway, so she's from Vermont, and then, you know, I became aware of this facility that used to be used to build pre-manufactured homes, and it was empty, and so that's kind of how you know, Satori got started.
Can I ask you a question? Are you a cannabis consumer, John?
Not in a major way. I don't like smoking it because I have throughout my life taken sports very seriously, and I don't like smoking anything. And I have tried edibles with no success. Well, I shouldn't say that. I find microdosing edibles is very life enriching for me. If I take too many, cannabis is a funny drug, I find, because it impacts people very differently. Some people end up with a high that's got a completely different texture than other people. Even if they're smoking the exact same strain, the exact same joint, they're smoking the exact same amount. And for me, I don't know what it is, but for me, I lose all short-term memory. And I hate that because I'm a guy that likes interesting conversation. I like engaged conversation. And if I, take too much cannabis, I like lose my train of thought in the middle of a sentence. And needless to say, that's not a very good recipe for having fun conversations. I find using cannabis more. I don't know if I should be divulging this stuff in your show, but I've found psilocybin to be a very life enriching
Oh,
drug for
God
me.
forbid you talk about mushrooms on my show, John.
Caleb, I don't know, man. I'm just being honest. I have found that I really I'm kind of a stubborn guy, and I don't know how much you're into the neurochemistry of what goes on with psilocybin, but it essentially rewires your neural pathway so that instead of doing something because you've historically done it that way, you do something based on more rational, objective, sensible reasons and motivations. And if you're stubborn like I am, I would like to say like I was, but I know better than to do that. I find psilocybin to be, I don't know, a life enricher. Cannabis helps me sleep when I need to sleep. It enhances intimacy for sure. And it does, yeah, I'm a user, but a light user, I would say.
And I'm not going to argue with you on the mushroom stuff. Um, let's keep it moving. And I did want to slap your logo up here again. John Campbell here from Satori. Thanks again for being here, John. One of the things that you talked about was maybe not being a multi-state operator, but a multi-state investor. And I wanted to ask you about some of the companies maybe that you have a piece of, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I would think your listeners are most interested in what's going on in Vermont, but
Well,
whatever.
right. But we're going to build to that. So like some of the Zip Run, that was one of them. And we got this, like, if you don't mind me doing a screen share, this is from the Satori Investment Partners here. Zip Run is one of the companies that I found listed on there. And I'd like to ask you about some of these other ones too, Terrapin and stuff like that, if that's okay. But I thought maybe we would start with Zip Run.
Well, that's old. The Zip Run is now spelled ZYPRUN
Right.
because 2 or 3 years ago they had to change because I forget why. There's some other buddy that was Zip something and they got their panties in a wad, so we had to change the logo. In any event, Zip Run is a delivery company based in Boston that it's been fun to watch. It was started by some guys that got their license and just really, I don't know, kind of motivated, go get them guys. And so I invested a small amount of money for a relatively small percentage of the company, but mainly because I don't know how I say this and not come off as looking like I don't know, a control freak or something, but I don't like to invest in publicly traded stocks because you have no say over the direction that the company takes. I like investing in companies where I at least will, have an ear. Like I either know the CEO or I know people that are on the board or I know the managers so that if I think the company's doing something that doesn't make sense, I can voice my opinion and have it be heard. Where, that I've never been an investor of significant enough magnitude to command the ear of a publicly traded company. But Zip runs a small company, and they seem to enjoy or value the input that they were getting from myself and my partners. And so that's been, a fun investment to watch grow. They started real small with just, I think initially we had 5 cars, and we're up to something like 15 or 18 cars now. So it's been a fun ride so far.
And so, what I read about Zipron was that between Satori Investment Partners and Millennium Capital, I think you said it's how it's pronounced.
I think that's pronounced, yeah.
Gave them roughly $5 million, $4.9 million over a couple of rounds of funding. Is that accurate, John?
I don't know. That sounds about right. I know that I didn't give him nearly that much. I gave him a small percentage of that. I don't know how much Millennium gave him. And this is embarrassing, but I haven't seen a cap table for that company in probably 2 or 3 years. So I don't really know or remember what the percentages are. I just know that they're doing a good job growing the company.
Cool. All right. And I'm going to breeze through these other ones so we can get to this.
I forgot to mention, sorry, Caleb, I should have mentioned that I don't know if it matters. It may matter to some of your listeners. Candidly, it doesn't matter to me. Ziprun is a social equity company. It's
right. That's on the list here. And I was hoping to ask you about, and sorry to interrupt you, but my dad got arrested by the FBI when I was 7. So I remember these like when the social equity rules came up, I was looking at them closely, but I also have my own beefs with the social equity program, which I've been very vocal about on social media, but I'd certainly love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I guess, boy, this is probably going to alienate a lot of people, but it's who I am, so they ought to know. I lived in the Caribbean for 14 years. I lived on St. John, which is 80% black and 20% white, for 11 years. My kids were all raised there. I played on the national soccer team down there. There's a lot of times where I'd be the only white guy on the field. I learned something being a minority, being a racial minority, that I hadn't learned to that point, because I grew up in suburban Boston that was very, very white. Went to a college that, I had a lot of black friends because I was on the track team, and there was a lot of black guys on the track team. But what I learned is that there really is no difference between white and black people. That, like on a soccer team, every soccer team I've ever been on, there's been a kid that, dribbles too much and thinks he's great and irritates the shit out of you. Every soccer team I've been on, there's been a kid that isn't that good, but just works super hard and is just, got the best attitude ever. There's kids that are kind of lazy. They don't get back on defense. And then there's kids that are Nazis about getting back on defense. What I learned from, living in the Virgin Islands is every soccer team I was on, it had the exact same mix of people. And so, this maybe reflects poorly on me, but I invested in Zipron not because these guys were social equity and were, a different race than I was, but because they had serious chops, man. They were good, hardworking guys. I wouldn't have cared if they were orange or polka dotted. I was going to invest with them. And I just, and then another social equity, I guess, issue is regarding, employees. We've got people at Satori that work for us that, had spent time in jail, and I didn't hire them because they had spent time in jail. I hired them because these are guys that share the vision that I share. They share the attitude I share about cannabis, that they think that cannabis is a good thing, that it can enrich people's lives, that it shouldn't be illegal. And unfortunately, they were engaged in the cannabis business before it was legal, and they got caught and had to go to jail, which I feel very bad about. But I didn't hire any of the guys that work for me that were in jail because they were in jail. I hired them to work for us because they're good people because they share our values. They're hard workers. They care about the company. They care about the job. I wouldn't care if they, I don't know. It matters who you are more than it matters, what you've done. I guess that's probably an oversimplification, but if you, I don't know if you want to hear more on that subject, but
well, I'd like to hear what I'd like to ask you about, John, is about Northeast Processing.
Yeah, I don't, that was, we were trying to actually, I don't think we were trying to invest in that company. We wanted to buy that company. And then we didn't. And the reason why wasn't so much because of any shortcoming on Northeast Processing's part. I think it was more because they had a business model that was really geared toward Delta 8. And I don't know if you remember this, but this was what, 2-3 years ago. And then all of a sudden, there's a crackdown. I guess the CCB just said, hey, look, no Delta 8 in Vermont. And so then we didn't end up buying Northeast Processing. And I think Northeast Processing, they ended up moving. They moved out of Vermont. I don't know. I think they ended up in Florida or something. I don't remember. But we looked at it. It was an opportunity we thought we were going to want to take advantage of, and then we didn't.
And so, could I ask you about your other partners in Satori Investment Partners, Scott McGuffey and Chris White?
Well, they're not partners anymore, really. Chris had to resign his partnerships because he had another business that needed a loan from a federally chartered bank, and the federally chartered bank said, "Hey, you can't be at all involved in the cannabis business if we're going to lend you this money." So Chris
was a guy from Barclays, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And so he had to resign. So he's no longer involved. And then Scott also resigned. So those guys aren't Satori Investment Partners anymore.
Okay, cool. And I noticed he shut the website down. I tried to find it and it was offline, but John Campbell, Satori. Could you tell me, John, how maybe you selected the location for your business here in Vermont? And I know there's some other stuff attached to that. I'm really curious about what you guys did to clean up the site too. I'd love to hear about that. But how do you go about selecting a location when you're investing in a cannabis business?
Well, that's a $1 million question.
Thank you.
Caleb, some of the things I've done in my career turned out to be smart moves, and they, did good things for me. Other things I've done in my career were not so smart. And, at the time you think, oh, what I'm doing is really smart. I'm not being a dumb shit here. Like, I'm doing the right thing. And then you often find out that no, you are a dumb shit, or you were a dumb shit. And that's a bummer. Scott McGuffey was living in Vermont, my partner, and he became, and he knew that I had done pretty well with some of my cannabis investments, and he became aware of this Middlebury property being available, and he was like, "Oh, we can buy it. It shouldn't be too expensive because it's got some environmental problems. It's technically a brownfield site. We'll have to spend some money cleaning it up, but it's all clean upable stuff. It's not like, radioactive where there's a half-life that it's, going to be contaminated for years or anything." And so I remember doing the math, trying to determine if Vermont was a good market or not. And this is where I really screwed up. I was trying to figure out what the size of the market in Vermont was going to be, and whether the Vermont market was big enough to handle, a large scale facility. And I did my own calculations, and I kind of figured that based on the population of Vermont, the size of the market ought to be about $250 million a year. And that was, and this was a very conservative calculation because, like, I was comparing per capita cannabis use in Pennsylvania, where it's medical only, with what the per capita cannabis use in Vermont would be, straight up. I wasn't taking into account the fact that Vermont was recreational, which should have meant that there should have been an even higher advantage for Vermont. But so I came up with my calculations right around 240 million a year, I guess it was. And then Scott or somebody pointed out to me that, oh, wow, that's really close to what the CCB came up with. The CCB was saying that the Vermont cannabis market should be about the same. And, you know, no two ways about it. I was wrong.
Do you have any idea where those projections came from, John?
No, I know where my projections came from. I don't know where the CCB got theirs. But and the funny thing is,
Vicente Strategies is where that came from.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
For
Carry
me, what's irritating is that really the market calculations for the size of the market weren't wrong. I do believe that the market in Vermont is $250 million. It's just that the black market has half that, and the legal market has probably less than half that. And so that has been, you know, a big egg on my face for miscalculation, not appreciating, you know, just how big the black market was. And you know, this is public admission. I should have listened to my wife. She was saying, you know, John, I grew up in the Northeast Kingdom. You swing a dead cat, you hit a marijuana grower, a black market grower. And I was like, yeah, honey, but it's not that, you know, that pervasive. And I was wrong and she was right. And as a result, you know, we ended up, you know, building a facility that was based on projections that were unrealistic.
One question I wanted to ask you, John, is, you know, based on the fact that you've invested in cannabis companies in multiple different states, I'm really curious how you feel the regulatory framework in Vermont is compared to other states where you've invested in cannabis companies.
Okay, I'd like to give you more than a 2-minute answer to this if I could, because this
we still got half an hour left, John. So yeah, go ahead.
Plays one of my big issues here. Okay, and of course I don't want, you know, anybody from the CCB to get all pissed off or mad at me.
But James Pepper watches my show every day.
I don't know if you're serious or not, but that doesn't change what I'm about to say. You know, in summary, I don't think the CCB is doing a very good job, and I don't want that to come off as, you know, a condemnation of the job they're doing or a criticism of James Pepper or anything like that. But here's why I say that. I'm irritated, candidly, that my company takes a lot of heat. And if you ask any of the haters, if you ask the dispensary, hey, how come you got no Satori product in here? Oh, well, it's because they're big. We don't like them because they're the big bad wolf. We don't like them because they're big. And that bothers me because play a little game with me, Caleb. Okay, imagine
this was one of the things we were going to talk about.
Right,
and it
right. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to roll into that right now. Is that all right?
Yeah, please. And one of the things I asked you is, why don't do you understand the public perception of your company? And you said, yeah, I think people don't like us because we're big. That was something.
Well, some people don't, not everybody. I mean, we do.
Well, so tell us why you believe that. And I believe you also said some of the legacy guys maybe have a negative impression of you. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on both of those things, John.
So let's imagine you're a tier 1 grower and you're having trouble selling your product. And because there's just too much supply out there, there's not enough demand. If you're a tier 1 or a tier 2 grower and you're working, you know, hard trying to create the best product you can, and you're unable to sell it at a price that you think is fair or reasonable or that allows you to make a profit so you can keep on doing it, and you're aware that there's another company out there that's big and they're, you know, flooding the market. Let's assume this company was accounting for half the wholesale product that was being sold in Vermont. And let's assume this big bad wolf company that was accounting for half the product grown in Vermont wasn't really following the rules. Okay, they weren't really testing their product the way the CCB was saying they were supposed to be tested. They weren't really paying their taxes the way you're supposed to pay taxes. they were really kind of acting in a malicious, nefarious way. And then let's assume this big bad wolf company, in addition to supplying half the weed grown in Vermont, in addition to not paying their taxes, in addition to not properly testing their products, in addition to not following the rules and regulations that they were supposed to, in addition to doing all this, let's assume this big bad wolf was really had the intention of screwing you, of trying to put you out of business. Okay, then if I'm a tier 1 grower, I would hate that big bad wolf company with all my energy, and they would deserve my hate because they weren't being good. They weren't being a good company, right? They were cheating. They were not following the rules. And I think that's what a lot of tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 growers think we are. They think that we're producing, a meaningful quantity of cannabis, and we've got the intention of gaining some unfair advantage over them and screwing them in some way. And Caleb, the reason why I'm very grateful to you for letting me come in your program is I want to explain that that's not the situation. And here's why. Yesterday, and this data is super current. Yesterday I looked up, there's 401 licensed growers in Vermont. Okay. And those 401 licensed growers are licensed to grow, I have it written down here, 683,000 square feet of canopy. Okay. So 401 growers, 683,000 square feet of canopy. Now, Satori, we have a license to grow 15,000 square feet of canopy.
Right. The tier 5 indoor, right?
Yeah, we're tier 5 indoor. We're not using all 15,000 square feet. We're using, I think, right around half or maybe a little more than half. But
so
bottom line,
why not just get it? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Right. So we're licensed to grow 15,000 of 683,000. So that means that we're licensed to grow 2.2% of what's licensed in Vermont.
Well, why not just get a tier 3, John, if you're not operating?
No, hear me out. Hear me out, because that's not going to make a difference, Caleb. Did you hear me out? Please let me get through this, okay? Let's assume we decided to throw in the towel and pull out of Vermont and not grow any cannabis. That's not going to change things for the tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 growers one tiny bit. They're going to sell 2% more, or they're going to get 2% more, per pound for their product. That's not going to change their life. That's not going to improve their situation at all. Satori's not the big bad wolf. The big bad wolf is that company that's growing half the marijuana consumed in the state. It's not following the rules. It's not doing the testing. The big bad wolf, Caleb, is the black market. And all that anger and hatred that's directed at us by those small guys is, it's, sorry to use a harsh word, but it's stupid. If
the black market is still where I get all my weed from.
Check it out, Caleb. If you're a small tier 1 grower and you have a choice, you can have Satori go out of business and start selling 2% more product and making 2%, or you can have the CCB use some of those dollars that you're paying them for your annual license fees, use some of those dollars that Vermont's collecting on taxes, and crack down on the black market. So all of a sudden, the big bad wolf that's pumping 50% of the cannabis into the Vermont market is out of business, and all of a sudden you're making twice as much money, and you're able to sell twice as much cannabis. That's who you should be hating. And here's what really blows my mind. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little agitated here.
Go ahead.
We felt like that because we are bigger than the average guy, we're bigger than all the guys. The
biggest license in the state, John.
Yeah,
right?
We felt that we could play a meaningful role advancing the interests of legal growers in the state of Vermont. So we sent our check off to join the Vermont Growers Association. And I couldn't believe it. They sent our check back, said, we don't want you as a member. So clearly the Vermont Growers Association thinks the big bad wolf is the guy that's got 2.2% of the market. And they're not cognizant of the fact that if they really want to help their members, if they really want to help the legal cannabis industry in Vermont, they should be recognizing that the black market is the big bad wolf, and that they should be lobbying to have the CCB spend some of this money they're collecting from all of us on cracking down on the black market. Now, look, if you're a black market consumer, you're going to think that, oh, geez, Campbell, what an asshole. Like he's trying to take away my cheap supply of untested, weed. But if you want to do that, that's fine. But don't in the same breath say, oh, but he's also screwing the little guy. No, man, I'm not screwing the little guy. The black market's screwing the little guy, and they're screwing me. They're screwing me because, believe me, I would like to be making twice as much. I'd love to be selling twice as much cannabis as I am. I would love it if the price that we were getting was, I guess if they did shut down the black market completely, that's not going to double the price of cannabis, but it certainly isn't going to make it lower. We'd all be better off if there wasn't a black market supplying such a massive supply of cannabis to the market.
John, you said you got a hard stop at 2. I got a couple more I'd like to get in here.
Okay.
And one of them is that I've checked out the Vermont Lobbying records. It looks like over the last couple bienniums, you guys have done $90,000 or $100,000 of lobbying in the state of Vermont, and I'm wondering what kind of things you're hoping to accomplish with that.
So the main thing that I would say that it's changed. Initially, we were lobbying to try and get them to lift the potency limits because I think that it's dumb that you're not allowed to sell flower that's more than 30% THC.
THC caps.
I think that THC cap for flower should be lifted. I think the 60% concentrate should be lifted. And so we are working hard to get those potency caps lifted. More recently, and then we stopped. We're not paying the lobbyist anymore because we couldn't afford to. But having said that, I did just write a check to join this effort that's being led by Dave Silberman because a lot of the advertising rules the CCB has imposed are onerous. They're just ridiculous, and he's tried constructively to get them to reassess those advertising and marketing rules, and has failed. So now he's saying he needs to kind of step it up a bit and go after them a little bit more aggressively. And I think that's good. That'll be good for Satori. That'll be good for everybody. And we were lobbying for things that we felt would be good for all the legal growers in the state. I would hope the Vermont Growers Association will reconsider their rejection of our membership and recognize, hey, these guys are in the same boat as we are. They're just as irritated that the black market is not being cracked down upon. The black market is screwing up all of our profit margins. And I see this. So you want people to start.
So John, let me
popping up. No, I don't want to arrest the black market growers. I want them to either convert to the white
legacy.
Market,
here, read this one too.
What's that? The legacy market growers and dealers created this market without them. We have no genetics and interest. Well, that's not really true. I'm sorry. Look at people in states that have no legacy market, no black market, still consume cannabis. Certainly I would credit the black market for the widespread, Vermont has a higher per capita cannabis use than most other states. And I credit the black market with that if there had been a less robust black market, there would not be as much cannabis being consumed in Vermont as there is. But based on these comments, it looks like you got a lot of black market listeners that I've probably pissed off.
Absolutely, I do, John. Yeah.
Well, anyway,
and look, I think these comments are fairly respectful, like straightforward question. Does John want the state to not allow homegrown anymore? How do you feel about homegrown, John?
Of course not. No, John thinks that the state should allow, what's it, like 6 plants or something, a reasonable amount for personal consumption. I'm all about that. We sell clones to dispensaries, which sell to home growers. So, we support the home growers. We don't think that should be outlawed.
John, do you mind? And I want to. We got about 15 minutes left here, and let me slap your logo up one more time here. It's John Campbell, Satori, Vermont. Great conversation here, John. I want to go back to the layoffs because I have a comment here from one of your layoffs. Do you mind if I read it to you?
Well, yeah, I do. Because, well, I guess, no, you can go ahead and read it, but I guess before you do, I don't think that anybody that got laid off is going to say anything positive about the company because they're
Oh,
pissed off
can
that
I
they got laid off. So
hold up? Let me put this story up. This is a story from Greenmont, Green Mountain, Vermont Cannabis News. I think it's Vermont. It's from Brattleboro Reformer. This is from February, John. And this was talking about the jobs you guys have created and your facility. And now we're seeing this kind of like big string of layoffs. And I'm curious, what happened in between February and now where you had to lay off all of these folks?
well, it had actually the difficulties started in not October, I guess, in November, because our sales just plummeted in November after all the outdoor grown hit the market. And we started losing lots and lots of money. And luckily, we had kind of a war chest from when we originally capitalized the company. But we thought, oh, well, it's just a temporary blip that, yeah, November and December are going to be bad months because of the flood of outdoor grown. But then it never really recovered. And we didn't see an end to the cash bleed. And so, we had a choice. Either we don't lay anybody off, and the company was really going to suffer to the point where potentially everybody would lose their job, or we laid off some of the people and allowed most of the people to keep their jobs. And I don't know if you've ever had to lay anybody off, Caleb, but it sucks. It sucks for the person.
I have not.
Okay, well, it's funny. I'm an old guy. I'm 61 years old, and I don't think I've ever laid anybody off in my entire career. And I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I've employed lots and lots of people, and I don't recall. I've never had to personally lay off people. And on that one Friday, we had to lay off like 13 people. And I would say it was the worst day of my life, because it was, but it was even worse for those people. For me, like, my job is a large part of my identity. It's like, and I think for most men and women, your job is integral to who you are as a person. And if you lose your job, that's like losing part of your humanity. It's like losing part of your value as a human being. It's horrible. And to have to do that to somebody, just and knowing that the person's going to suffer like that is the worst, man. It is just awful. And I hope you never have to lay anybody off. And I can tell you, and I'm saying, I lay in bed at night thinking, like, John, how did you screw up so bad? Like, why did it come to this? And it came to this because, I thought that things were going to be better. I thought that we were going to be able to sell more flour. And the black market guys think I'm an asshole. Well, I think they're assholes. Sorry.
Well,
Wow.
wow.
If it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have had to lay off all these people. And so that's kind of pointing the finger. I don't like the way that sounds.
I don't like the way that sounded either, John.
Yeah, well, I retract that, and I hope you'll accept my apologies. But I just
live streamed, and a bunch of people just heard that.
Okay, well,
I think that's maybe the kind of guy that you are, John, and that's the reason why.
What kind of guy am I, Caleb? I'm a kind of guy that recognizes when I make a mistake, and I apologize for it, and I retract it. Okay, so yeah, I am irritated and mad at the black market because I do think they're hurting all the legal growers, and so that's what I think.
And I think that some of these guys are mad at guys like you who have no experience in this industry whatsoever, and you come in with a bunch of money and throw it at the problem. And look, we're being honest with each other,
no
right?
Experience in the industry whatsoever. I mean,
you have experience in the cell tower industry, and you had some investments out in, if you want to talk about your California investments out in 2009, but I don't really think you know much about weed whatsoever. I think you just throw money at it.
Well, I don't know where this is going. I don't, if you, I've just spent a lot of time out of my day trying to share with you what's going on with me. And if your response is, hey, you're a dumb shit, you don't know anything about cannabis,
I'm
I don't
not
think
saying
that's
you're dumb,
out of my
John. I'm
perspective.
saying that I don't think you have
Well, it
experience
is.
in this industry.
Look, I don't have experience growing cannabis plants in my basement. Okay. A lot of your listeners probably do. Okay. I do have experience running successful businesses that employ people and improve their lives. And that's a valuable thing to have to bring to Vermont. I would argue that my experience running businesses that have been successful have had a positive economic impact on the cannabis community in Vermont than people that have a lot of experience growing cannabis plants in their basement. So if what we're trying to do here is like give different people a gold star for knowing the finer terpene profiles and so on, I don't get that gold star. But if we're trying to give a gold star to people that care about about improving people's lives by employing them gainfully, and if we are giving gold stars to people that are committed to growing a safe product that's tested and legal in accordance with rules and regulations, I think Satori deserves a gold star.
I'd like to read this comment here because we're running out of time here, John. I want to read the statement from one of your former employees. And it goes like this, quote, I'll just state that Satori was the worst place I've worked at in the 20 plus years I've been able to work. I've been a Vermonter for 20 of those years. In my opinion, while John is a businessman, he isn't a businessman of Vermont, and it shows. If he was a businessman of Vermont, he wouldn't have treated the Satori employees like he has. The massive layoff was no surprise, and the events leading up to it were worse. I was part of the layoff of 15 talented Vermont people with families. He gave us 2 weeks to work with the option of unemployment. I could not continue to aid in the production of Satori just to line his pockets, all the while emotionally abusing his employees. Vermont is Vermont is of the people, for the people, and John is only for himself. He cut the salaries down and fired full departments. He created a very toxic work environment that has and still keeps people on edge. In my opinion, he is a bully who thinks he can motivate people with scare tactics. It's gross behavior and a blessing that I was let go. Do you have a reaction to that statement, John?
Yeah, I do. And thank you for letting me react to it. My first reaction is, as I said, losing your job sucks. And I think that it's natural that a person that loses their job is going to lash out at what they think is the cause for them having lost their job. And so I empathize and I sympathize, and I'm really sorry for all the people that we had to lay off. That's horrible. And there's nothing that I'm going to say or do that's going to ease the anger or the hatred that they feel. That there isn't. But I can offer the following. If Satori really was such a horrible place to work, why are there still people working there? If it's so horrible and everybody's so underpaid, why are people still showing up to work? Why are there still people that are enthused about the different, new products that we're trying to launch and the new approach that we've got to trying to keep this business viable? Number one. Number
Can you
two,
read this comment here?
no,
Can you read
no,
this comment here, Scott
well,
Waring?
I'll read the comment when I finish. Well, there's one more thing I want to say about what
Go
you
ahead.
already, because look, it's easy for people to pile up and like say that I'm lining my pockets. Nothing could be further from the truth. Like when you're losing a significant amount of money every month and you can't continue to do that because you don't have enough money to continue to do that, it's really silly for somebody to say, oh, he's lining his pockets. No, man, my pockets were getting drained and I had to slow down.
Were you
Stop.
trying to line them and then figured out this was a bad investment, John?
Well, so I'm not aware of anybody that's in business for themselves that has the intention of losing money. Do you? And
No,
I'm
I
pretty
don't.
sure every single grower out there who's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 grower is wanting to make money. Because when you
Everybody
make
wants to make
money,
money, John.
yeah, that's
The
right.
people,
And
people
why?
that are
Why do people want to
concerned with
make money?
Well, the
Why
people
do
that are
people want to?
concerned with what you're doing is that you're trying to make money off something you have no experience in, and some of them have been arrested by the cops, had their house raided, and been harassed the whole time. And I think you just made some very kind of negative comments about the legacy guys in this industry who
Yeah,
did
the negative
build this,
comment,
so
just to
that
review.
guys like you, so that guys like you could come in and make money about it.
No, that's not true. That's a mischaracterization of what I said, Caleb, and I don't appreciate that. I was very clear in saying the legacy guys that didn't take the time or energy or spend the money to go get a license, that those legacy guys, they're screwing all of the people that did spend the time and energy to go get a license. They're screwing all the people that are paying their taxes. They're screwing all the people that are paying to get their product tested. They're not just screwing me, they're screwing everybody. And if you're going to be a legacy guy and say, hey, I'm legit because I've been doing this, for 40 years, and it's okay for me to screw Campbell because he's out here just like all the small guys trying to make money so that his company can grow, so that he can employ more people, so that more people can get raises and have bonuses and improve their life. That's just silly. I'm really
You just
sorry.
laid off a bunch of your staff, John. And this story from
And I'm really
this story
sorry.
from 4 months ago says that you guys were expanding, and so it's really curious to me maybe what happened in between then. And I don't
Caleb,
buy the story of it going super well.
look, I understand your agenda here is to make Satori look bad and to tear us
It's
down.
not my agenda,
My
John.
agenda
I've
here.
a
Well,
fair shake
why
I
is
have
it
with all of my guests here, and I have not been a dick to you, right? This
now
interview
you
has gone.
are? You're being a dick now. You're totally being a dick, Caleb, and I don't appreciate it. You're saying that, hey, what happened that all of a sudden in February you're expanding and all of a sudden you're laying people off in June as if like
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
like
It's 4
purposely trying
months.
to screw these guys.
Did you ever?
Use your
Hey,
brain,
John.
dude. Let me speak. I let you speak.
Did you ever
Okay. Now,
sponsor that publication
no,
at Green Mountain,
I'd like
Vermont Cannabis News?
I'm
Or
not
did you
going to
give them
continue this
any money
podcast
for
if you're going to keep
advertising?
on interrupting me. Are you going to let me speak or not? I'm a guest on your
Did
show.
you give them money to run
Can
pieces
you
for you?
please stop interrupting me? All right, that's 3 times I've asked nicely. Okay, please stop interrupting me. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that I get aggravated when it appears to me that you're trying to say I laid these people off for no good reason. That in February, if everything is peaches and cream in February, why is it that all these people are losing their jobs in June? Well, it's because everything wasn't peaches and cream in February. We were in a bad cash situation and it didn't turn around. And if we didn't lay the people off, more people were going to suffer. It was not a voluntary thing. It was not like oh, hey, you know what? I'm making $100,000, but if I laid these people off, I could make $200,000 a month. Why don't I lay them off and make $200,000 a month? No, it was almost the exact opposite. I'm losing shit tons of money. If I don't do something and lay people off, the entire company is going to go out of business and everybody's going to lose their job. And look, I don't expect you to believe that. I don't expect the
Oh, I
legacy growers to
expect you
believe it.
to
If
come
there's
back to the
anybody,
question about.
let me finish. Let me finish. If there's
Yeah, you
anybody
should have
that's
started at a
listening
smaller
that
tier and made
understands,
sure that you had a customer base. Instead, you jump into the largest possible tier and hope that it would go well for you. And I think that was your big mistake here, John.
I said that I made a mistake. I misestimated the size of the legal market in Vermont. That's my mistake. I own that. I'm not trying to point the finger at anybody else for me blowing that up. I blew that up. That was a big mistake that both myself and the Cannabis Control Board underestimated what we thought, or sorry, we overestimated what we thought the size of the legal market in Vermont would be. So, but now what was the comment you wanted me to respond to?
I'm about out of shit here, John. I want to give you the last minute. And I'm
Put
gonna
put the comment back up. Put the comment back up and I'll answer
the
it.
comment. Okay, I'll read the last comment, dude.
I mean, I get the feeling you're aggravated because you probably told a bunch of people I'm having John Campbell on the podcast and I'm going to eviscerate him. And
John,
now you're thinking, oh shit, we're almost out of time and I've not eviscerated him. Well,
here's the
what?
thing, John.
What the hell?
You've
Are you
eviscerated
going to put up the
yourself.
comment or not? Because at
Here,
noon,
here we
I
go.
got to go.
So pointing out that something someone is actually doing is being a dick. Here's Ronnie saying, "Kick this guy out. I'm really done listening to his bullshit.
Let's call it. Let's call
Follow
it. It's
the
noon.
money." Well, no,
It's
we're at
noon.
the end, John.
No,
And
this guy said kick
I'm
him
still
out, and I think you
thankful.
ought to listen.
Look, this is from Scott Waring. This is the comment I wanted to read. If you do not remember laying off people before this, let me remind you that you did.
Okay, well, I don't remember laying off people. It's certainly not. I mean, I don't remember. Scott can, remind me who I laid off or when, but and so I don't. And look,
Scott,
maybe
if you're
whatever. Look, I got to go, Caleb. I appreciate you
Hey.
letting me speak on your show.
Yeah.
And
I want to give you the last minute
appreciate
here,
it.
John. Yo, so like I said at the beginning, if there's anything we missed or any shameless plugs or shout outs you want to give, now is the time. I'm going to slap your logo up one more time. John Campbell from Satori, thank you for joining me today. I know this has not been the most fun conversation you probably ever had, but I do appreciate your time here, man. Thank you.
I guess if I get the last word, in summary, I would just say that I hope people understand that Satori is interested in, Satori sees our interests as aligning with all the legal growers in the state. And I think that it would be smart for us all to work together with the CCB to improve conditions for legal growers in the state to thrive and prosper. That's my summary comment.
Oh,
Thanks.
I'm going to check it out.
Okay, man.
John, thank you for joining me. If you have a minute, stick around. I'm going to play my outro video. That's John Campbell, Satori, Vermont. I'm your host, Caleb Teskey. And remember, the devil's in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Peace.